Two brothers get caught up in their worldly wants for each other, but as their feelings grow stronger, their secret seems to come out. In 1985, Richard, a college student, walks home very late at night, going through dark streets and past old apartment buildings. At the same time, his older sister Natalie is waiting for him in her simple home. When the sister hears the old steel stairs thumps, she runs to scold her brother for being so late. Unlike how she feels, Richard doesn't seem to care about what's going on as he jokes about it. Soon after, he makes fun of the fact that her sister's apartment is full of flowers, which he thinks shows how badly she wants a relationship. Natasha is upset about this. To make things more interesting, her brother takes her out of the house. They go to a rural diner and talk about their lives, especially since their parents died and they hadn't seen each other in a long time. Natalie talks a lot about how her brother is the only person she can talk to. Naturally, Richard says that he's been very busy learning urban planning, even though he finds it very interesting. Natasha gets sad when she hears this and talks about how great her brother's life is in London. Richard makes her feel better by opening the tomato on display in a funny way and finding a tooth inside it. After hours, Richard wakes up at home because his neighbor is making a lot of noise. As he looks around the flat, he sees Natalie lying on the floor and gazing at her candles. His sister talks about how upset she is that she feels stuck in her life and job because she believes she is too old to start over. Richard tells her to be creative, but Natalie is still not optimistic. After that, she asks him to kiss her. He kisses her and hugs her, but his sister kisses him instead. Natalie breaks up the kiss right away and casually says sorry to her brother. As she walks out of the room, the man looks confused and thinks. After 2 years, Richard calls Natalie and asks her to bring his wallet to the train stop by the time the train leaves. He left it in her apartment and forgot about it. The sister doesn't like that she can't see him because he walks away so often, but after the brothers beg her, the sister gives in and skips her boring job as a secretary to a younger boss to get the wallet. When they get to the train stop, she gives him the wallet while he looks for his train. Natalie goes after her brother and starts yelling about how unhappy she is with her job and life, but she sees that he is busy. The man says sorry and that he needs to find his train. His sister tells him to stay in touch because Scotland isn't that far away. Richard says goodbye to her. Natasha can only stare at him as he moves away and offers to help a pretty lady walking in the same direction. Another year later, in a brand new building, a man and a woman are laughing when the phone rings. When Richard answers the phone, he sees that it's his sister, and he tells his lover and secretary as they reluctantly leave. Natalie gets more and more angry when she finds out about his careless lifestyle. She scolds him for being careless while ignoring her co-workers' curious looks. Not happy, when he hangs up, she has to end the call. So she goes back to her sad habit of circling job ads in the paper. After 2 years, Richard quickly walks down a narrow path and into a rural office for a job interview. Colin, his strict boss and interviewer, doesn't like how cocky he is or how well paid he is as an urban planner. The experienced boss tells him straight out that their company isn't as good as Richard's previous ones, especially when it comes to pay. But the application doesn't care about this and wants the interview result right away. Richard is at his new job when his sister calls and asks him to meet her husband, whom he missed at the wedding. He promises to come, but only half-heartedly. He then turns his attention to making friends with the food delivery woman, while Colin complains about hiring him. After a few days, the family lunch falls on the same day as a very important meeting. After showing off his skills, Richard realizes that he has to go to a family event, but he doesn't go because he thinks his brother-in-law is boring. His co-worker Jessica talks him into meeting his family, so he drives to the address, passing by fancy homes that belong to the rich. He slowly opens a gate, which leads to a manor with a beautiful front yard. Natalie greets him and notes that he is late as he rings the doorbell. Richard talks about how great the house is and brings up something his sister said many years ago. She ate all the food. Natalie doesn't get it, so he doesn't bother her with it when his sister, who looks like she's dripping with money, calls him in and leads him to the yard. He finally meets Sinclair, who is married to Natalie, and his in-laws. Because the friend was late, the husband makes a funny comment about the extra pudding and cold soup. Richard keeps his smile on even when a tree branch drops something into his soup. Later, Sinclair shows his brother-in-law around the farm and talks about how beautiful it is. The guest talks with him about his thoughts. Natalie steps in, though, because she feels left out. The husband ignores her and brags about his things. It's clear that the brothers agree with each other when he takes a moment to check something. The brothers talk in a quiet place. When Natalie asks Richard about her husband, he flatters her by saying that she doesn't have a voice. He then sees Natalie's chain, which is the same one she wore when they first kissed. Sinclair breaks in on their private moment and jokes that it's Natalie's birthday, which Richard forgot. Natalie starts to blow out the candles in the yard, but her husband tells her she has to do it one at a time while Richard watches in silence. Sinclair makes fun of her, which makes her feel worse. Richard then asks Natalie if she's okay. She says she is, but he makes it sound like she doesn't have a chance to say what she wants. When Sinclair speaks up, he asks if he finally has Richard's support, which the brother-in-law pretends to give. Richard tells Jessica the next day about the family get-together and how ridiculously fancy and beautiful everything looks. When his co-worker asks how close he is to his sister, he tells her that they aren't close because their parents split up. He also says that Sinclair was Natalie's boss, but she didn't get the job, so she married the man instead. Colin scolds them out of the blue for wasting time at work, which ends the talk. The next day, Natalie and Sinclair pay Richard a surprise call at his office. The husband is interested in his brother-in-law's drawings right away, but Richard is enthralled by how beautiful his sister is. Natalie tells Sinclair to end their visit because she doesn't like how her brother is staring at her. Richard gets very angry the next day when his sister is hours late for their meeting. Natalie soothes him by stroking his face, which makes her brother notice that she's wearing the necklace again. Natalie kisses him while they look at each other and then pulls away to say sorry. She goes to the door, but then she turns around and goes into the kitchen to get something to drink. Richard walks up to her and touches her face. Natalie quickly wraps her arms around his neck, and the two of them kiss passionately. That being said, as things get closer, Natalie steps back and casually walks around the house to say something about how it looks. She tells Richard to stay away, even though she's the one who is upset. As the brothers look at each other, their desire for each other grows. This time they lock lips, which is the start of their first passionate moment together. Natalie then pulls away from her brother and acts like whatever happened between them is over. After that, she tells Richard that her husband wants to have lunch with them. Even though the brother hints that things might get weird, the next day the two men meet in Sinclair's office. The businessman tells Richard that he likes getting to know new people and asks him to another family event. He says that his wife doesn't want his brother to come. When Richard walks into the office the next day, it's sad, so Jessica tells him that Colin sent them notes because he was sick. Richard thinks his boss might be sick, but he's shocked to learn that it's a disease that can kill quickly. He was looking at their boss, so Jessica tells him to stop. When the weekend comes around, the family gets together again. Richard and Natalie move away from each other to talk about where they are going to meet up. Since the house is being fixed up, the sister sets up her parents-in-law's place, sure that no one will notice. Natalie, on the other hand, tells them they can't meet for 2 weeks because of their relationship. After having a private moment with her husband one day, Natalie tells him about her fears and asks if it's okay for her to be with him. Sinclair tells her he's okay before going back to reading his favorite book. While there is a chance, the wife asks her husband for permission to go on a work trip over the weekend. The husband agrees right away. The long-awaited weekend finally comes, and the brothers get together at the in-laws' apartment. Richard is amazed by the fancy place, and Natalie tells him about the old money. When the brother goes up to the rich wife, she says they can now talk. But as soon as the man walks up to her, she feels excited and passionate. Soon they wrap their bodies around each other and enjoy their own world. When the housekeeper comes back hours later, Natalie quickly pushes her out of the house while giving false reasons and stressing that Richard is her brother. That night, when she's with someone like Sinclair, the sister tells her lover about her bad feelings. Richard asks her about how loyal her husband is. When Natalie hears that Sinclair might be cheating on her, she gets defensive and suggests that they check on him the next day. When they go to Sinclair's office the next day, they see him eating at a nearby restaurant. Richard pulls Natalie away to keep up the lie that they are in New Newton. Natalie is excited to get close. They have fun together when they get back to their apartment. Natalie calls Sinclair in the evening to let him know about her supposed business trip, but Richard flirts with her by giving her butterfly kisses. Even though Natalie doesn't like affairs, they share a passionate moment after the call. During a walk in the evening, Richard is annoyed by how calm his partner is while they are doing something wrong. He suggests that they run away together, but Natalie strongly objects and tells him to forget about the idea. At the same time, Sinclair is freaking out because the dishwasher is broken and flooding the kitchen. He calls the hotel where his wife said she was staying quickly but finds that she's not there. He then asks the operator for the phone numbers of all the New Newton hotels. Sinclair shops for food to take his mind off of things. Even though he tells himself there must be a good reason for Natalie's lie, he can't help but look through her things. He makes the decision to follow logic because he wants to trust his wife and his strong instincts at the same time. At the same time, Richard keeps trying to get his lover to move in with him, but Natalie says they're not having an affair and are not dating. Before she'll meet up with her brother again, she tells him to find a girlfriend. The wife goes back home after the weekend trip is over. Sinclair asks her about her business trip in a calm voice, and she casually lies about everything while keeping a nice attitude toward her husband. Until then, Jessica scolds Richard for putting off his visit to Colin over and over again. He asks her to be his girlfriend, but he is thinking about something else. Jessica quickly declines, saying that she is upset with Richard's behavior. He doesn't give up and starts looking for a willing lover. Natalie gets a call late that night from her brother, who wants to meet her now that her conditions have been met. Sinclair closely observes his wife, and when Natalie tells him that Richard has a new girlfriend, he jokes that his brother-in-law must be very drunk to give him such news at this time. Natalie tries hard to keep a positive tone throughout the talk, but her angry face and tense body language are hard to hide. The next day, Paula, Richard's girlfriend, likes it when he massages her. She knows that their relationship can't go any further, but she finds the man's strange behavior interesting. When she asks Richard why he needs her, he tells her he loves her. Natalie, who is carrying the one-of-a-kind necklace and a picture of her brother, is crying out of anger and jealousy. At the same time, Sinclair listens to their most recent voicemails to see if there is anything strange. Nicole gets dressed up that afternoon and meets Richard in the hallway of a hotel. She says she almost didn't come, and she wants her brothers to sit far away, which makes Richard mad. Still, he quickly tells them that the job is done. Natalie purposely shows him a room key while he's talking, which makes him feel better, but she changes the subject by talking about how Sinclair asked about the hotel. When Richard finds out that Sinclair still doesn't know, he happily suggests that they keep going all summer. Natalie doesn't like the idea and says she won't give in just because her brother finds a sad finish interesting. Richard tries to get the key because he doesn't understand what she is saying and doing. Natalie protests loudly, which gets his attention and makes him take a step back. Once more, she talks to him and tells him that in order to see her, he needs to stay away for a month and visit his sick boss. Soon Richard will go to the hospital to see Colin. He tries to trick his boss by bringing books and nice things to say, but Colin can see through the act and knows that someone told the junior to come. Then Richard asks Colin to meet a big client, which makes Colin very excited. As they get on the train to the meeting, the junior tells his boss about the new city project and how unhappy he is with its progress. Colin makes fun of Richard's pessimism and comes to the conclusion that the younger man is set on staying that way. When the client gets to the office, seeing the boss's disease makes them very scared and shocked. Colin takes this chance to move the discussion in their favor. When the client eats a sandwich to ignore Colin, Colin takes the plate and even shares some with his co-worker, which makes the client feel bad. After that, Richard quickly tells Natalie that he finished the job, but Sinclair meets him and asks him to join him for a walk. Richard starts to worry about taking a boat to the place, but Sinclair keeps him busy with different things to calm him down. When they get to their destination, Sinclair gets their food ready and then makes a dark joke by throwing some of it into the river. Sinclair asks about Natalie's affair before Richard can answer. Richard says he doesn't know anything, but the husband says he's worried about how his wife is acting. Richard acts like he doesn't know who the man is and asks Sinclair. The smart husband tells him that he'll find out soon because he has a plan. Then, when kids dressed as monsters show up to scare them, Sinclair laughs. Then he says something important about how easy it is to track Richard. When they got back to the house, Natalie was waiting for them with bated breath. Then Sinclair tells them they have to move to Connecticut for work, which makes the kids even more angry. Natalie and Richard meet up in a hotel cafe the next day to talk about the sudden changes. She tells her husband quietly that she loves him, flaws and all, and she insists that he's right. Richard begs her not to leave, but Natalie says no straight out. As her brother starts to cry, she looks happy and interested. Richard storms off, and his sister follows him, which makes a scene. He begs them to stay together, but Sinclair joins them anyway. A short time later, Natalie leaves, leaving the two guys alone. Sinclair talks as normal, but he hints at what his wife is thinking about. He looks right at Richard, who's having a hard time staying calm. The brother leaves Sinclair and follows his sister to a phone booth where he tells her she has to stay. He is picturing a life without Natalie. The brothers fight, and a hotel worker steps in to make sure Natalie is okay. Richard tells her bad things will happen if she doesn't stay, and she walks away. Natalie leaves the business, and Sinclair tells Richard to wait a moment before following her. When Richard goes back to his room, the door is locked from the outside. He takes a lot of pills without caring. He goes to the building site but gets lost because of the side effects of the medicine and falls down. Soon after, he throws up everything with Natalie's help and realizes he's back in his apartment. She kindly tells him to behave and makes fun of his situation in a sneaky way. Richard tells her to go, but she instead asks him to their goodbye party. After a few days, the urban planner goes to work and looks longingly at Colin's stuff. "Hi, Jessica," who is sad tells him that those things will soon be gone. Richard tells her how great she is at running the business and asks her to go somewhere with him. Then there is a big party at the house for the getaway. The brother looks at the hosts with a very angry face, but Jessica tells him to calm down. Natalie is usually quiet, but she stands by Sinclair's side with confidence and talks to their guests. But Richard takes advantage of the chance to talk to his sister by herself. He tells Natalie he wants to hurt her and then grabs her hair and drags her while she tries to get away. Richard doesn't notice the people watching because he is focused on getting payback until they get to a quiet place. He hits his sister on the ground and says she is using and abusing him for her own benefit. He then treats her like trash. A loud truck honks, and Richard has to pull his sister to safety as they fall over rocks and dirt. After taking a deep breath, Natalie tells her brother she's sorry and says she thinks they're now even. She also says that the terrible thing he wants to happen will not happen. Once she is sure that Richard is quiet, she tells him that they are not moving and that Sinclair wants the party to go on as planned. Soon after, the messy and hurt brothers return to the party, which gets everyone's attention. They sit down at a table with drinks and snacks, and Sinclair joins them. He seems unaffected by the show as he ends the party. Soon after some thought, Sinclair carefully treats his wife's cuts while Richard stares in shock. The urban designer asks Sinclair if his brother-in-law knows something, and Sinclair says that he does. He says he's not ready to say anything more than what he already knows, though, because he has limits he doesn't want to cross, especially since it's all over. Richard makes fun of him, but Sinclair tells him with confidence that whatever they had is going away. The younger man praises his brother-in-law for being calm. Sinclair then says that someone needs to stay calm in the middle of everything. Natalie says nice things about her husband's intelligence, which makes Richard wonder what will happen next. Sinclair says he doesn't know either. While they walk around the nice neighborhood in the afternoon, Sinclair talks about different things that are going on around them. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.